Croeso I diwrnod 3. Welcome to day 3 of basic scales. If you ask a musician to explain to you the key of C flat major, they might say, oh, that's a bit complicated. But it depends on how you look at it. You can take a complicated thing, look at it a different way, and maybe it's not as complicated as you think. We're going to use a fingering chart and half steps and whole steps to take C flat major and just make it easy to practice so that you get the practicing part and therefore it'll just be easy to play rather than looking at all the flats and trying to get your head wrapped around that when you don't normally use all the flats. Let's go. Oh, and there's one more thing that you're going to need for today is a flat is always a half step lower than a letter note. So if you say B and then B flat, it's going to be one to the left. The squishy B takes it by a half step. Now we're ready to go. For learning this scale, you basically need 3 things: fingering chart, the whole step and half step pattern, and your instrument. So let's grab your fingering chart. It doesn't matter what fingering chart it is. Your bass fingering chart, trumpet, flute, clarinet, anything. They all have letters. Then we're going to need the whole step, half step pattern with a whole step in between to connect the scale. Remember that on a bell set, it's easy to see a whole step because each of these is a note in order. So this is a half step. And this is a whole step because there's a bell in between. It's the same thing with any of your fingering charts. If you have 2 notes next to each other, they are a half step. 1 note in between is a whole step. So if we're looking for C flat, we are looking for 1 note to the left of C. That is going to be C flat, which is also known as B. Then you need a whole step, D flat. Then you need another whole step, E flat. So you have whole step, and then a half step. It says E, but it's actually F flat in this case. I realize how crazy this is sounding because you're seeing on your chart that it says the letter E, but we want F flat. Well, there's F, this is F flat. So if you don't think about the letter names and the sharps and the flats and you just find your C to start, you go 1 to the left and that's your starting note. You have a whole step, half step, and then you need a whole step in between, so you're going to jump down to this note, and then whole step, half step. So whatever you're reading, it's not going to matter. It's all about finding your C flat scale, which is every flat. If you're still a little confused, everything is flat, and C flat is also known as B because you're not going to find it really easily on a chart. And F flat is also known as E. Keyboard, all the flats are up here: D flat, E flat, G flat, A flat, B flat, and the C flat is right here. That's what might be a little confusing, and the F flat is right here. I should mention that you will probably have to practice 4 notes at a time because that way you'll hear the Adams family for the first 4 notes, and then you'll hear the Adams family for the second 4 notes. Da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum. So make sure that you practice and practice and practice until you can just play it up and down, and then all you need is your starting note and you're good to go. If you follow the pattern of whole step, half step, with a whole step in between and whole step, half step, you'll be able to do this with any fingering chart, any scale. So C flat major, if you just find where C is and go 1 to the left and then do your pattern on any fingering chart, you're great. And you can play this scale. It's easy.